What's good, boys? I gotta let you know that this is actually a part 2 video. So, if you want to see the first part and know why we tier list the things the way we do, go ahead and watch it. Link will be in the description down below. Also, this video is sponsored by Arcane Fortress. So if you want to get yourself some sick TCG products, go ahead and check them out. Buying product from my affiliate link also helps me out as well. That's upside down. Alright, cool? We good? Awesome. Enjoy the video. Alright, Monkey Buys Juice is goated. Monkey Buys Juice is goated. Chat has spoken. Kaladesh, which is also going to be called a Vishkar from this point going forward. Also known as Lad, because Tier Maker is bad at cropping things. The next set is Ather Drift. But it's this like Mario Kart race between the 3 planes of Kaladesh, or sorry, a Vishkar. Let me try it again. It's Mario Kart between a Vishkar, Muraganda, that plane that Wizards has said is actually really hard to go back to, and was it Fiora?
Nope.
I don't remember. Oh, Amonkhet. Oh! So we actually are going back to Amonkhet. Ather Drift is Mario Kart, but on a Vishkar, Amonkhet, and Muraganda. A Vishkar is pretty cool. It's a steampunk themed plane. A Vishkar was the plane that gave us energy. That great mechanic that totally did not bust standard wide open. No, that's not true. That's not true. That did not happen. What do you mean energy? What do you mean they had to ban a bulk common called Attune with Aether that just happened to make 2 energy because the energy was too strong? That didn't happen. That's not true. Vehicles. We had vehicles in this set. So you can tap your creatures to accrue vehicles and have the vehicles attack people. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Vehicles are pretty cool. I liked vehicles. They were nice. They felt very power creepy because some of them were like 3 mana for an 8/8, but it has a high crew cost, so it's okay. We also had the inventions in this set, which was these super high chase rare cards you can get with unique art and unique frames, as you see with these very brassy steampunk inspired frames. Very cool. Fabricate, which was a mechanic where a creature would enter with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the fabricate value, or you would make a number of 1/1 servo artifact creature tokens equal to the fabricate value. I think people were like, whatever about fabricate. People didn't really care about that. Energy was very strong. And in Modern Horizons, they brought it back, which was I'm not gonna lie, I clowned on the idea for a pretty long time. Oh, energy in a Modern Horizons set? Oh, that's cringe. That's cringe, bro. That's gonna be terrible. And then energy was like the number one. Energy became the number 1 deck in Modern when they did that. Anyways, how do we feel about Vishkar, chat? A Vishkar cool? Why is there a monkey in S tier? That's Monkey Buys Juice. What the hell? What do you mean? Why is there a monkey in S tier? That's Monkey Buys Juice. We should have gone back to Capenna and Ather Drift. Where would the tracks go, bro? Where would the track go? You're gonna have people run over civilians in the old Capenna. Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, that's a really good point. Everyone loves call time, chat. The Norse plane. We just had God of War Ragnarok, which actually didn't win Game of the Year, if I recall correctly. A Norse plane that actually has 10 different realms, which was totally well communicated. Chat, can anyone in here tell me what the 10 realms are?
No.
Of call time?
No.
Nobody?
No.
Alright, cool. So, we have Isfell, which is white-blue and is home to the spirits of those who died outside of battle. We had Karfell, which is blue-black, which is the realm of the Viking zombies known as Draugr. We had Immerstern, which is black-red, a hellish landscape that houses demons. We had Notvold, red-green, where the trolls live amidst the mountains. We had Bretagard, green-white, home of the humans. Starnheim, white-black, where Valkyries live alongside fallen warriors. Surtland, blue-red, a land in constant turmoil inhabited by giants. Skemfar, black-green, the dark forest where the elves live. Axgard, white-red, a rugged mountainous peak home to the dwarves. And Litjara, a mysterious land of lakes and pines where the shapeshifters roam, which is blue-green. Just say, is it? No. At this point, I actually want to get away from guilds. I like dead ass. I'm so sick of them at this point. So the lore of this plane is that apparently the current gods, who are called the title of Scoti, actually turned against the old gods of Kaldheim, which were dubbed the Aenir, and sealed them away in order to rule Kaldheim for themselves. So this group of just assholes said, hey, we want power. And they challenged the old gods just so that they all could rule the plane for themselves. And it is generally agreed upon that the new gods are way worse than the old ones and are awful. When Phyrexia invaded the plane, all the realms essentially collided, merging into one singular plane. So all those 10 realms I told you about, they're all gone now. It's just one plane now. The World Tree, which kept all these realms separate, was burned to prevent Phyrexia from taking it for themselves. Since the end of the invasion, the Skemfar, which is the black-green elves of the plane, have redeclared war against the Scoti. So that'd be Halvar, Alrund, Kolvori, all them, right? Likely due to seemingly close relations with the Aenir. So the elves of this plane actually have, I guess, some sort of like ancient connection with the old gods. And so that's why they hate the current gods so much, because they believe that these new gods essentially imprisoned their ancestors. This plane gave us Fortell. Goated mechanic. Really cool mechanic. Fortell was sick as hell. So during your turn, you could pay 2 and put a card in your hand face down, exiled. And then you could cast it on a later turn for its Fortell cost. So if you didn't actually want to cast a spell all at once, you could pay some mana now and then pay the rest of the cards mana cost later. Really cool mechanic. We did have a precon based off of mechanic, but that precon sucked because there just wasn't enough Fortell cards. And also, I'm gonna be real, I think the Fortell commander actually like kind of was boring. We had this. Why was this thing not the commander of that precon? Whenever Ethereal Valkyrie enters or attacks, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down. It becomes Foretold. Its Fortell cost is its mana cost reduced by 2. Why was this not the commander for that deck? This would have been way cooler for that deck. Instead of, what was it, Raynar? Yeah, oh, Fortell costs less. Whenever you exile a card, I think a spirit, whatever. He's also 4 mana, which is the most like boring design space in commander, in my opinion. We had Treasure get brought back. I don't think that's really new, though. Every set had Treasure. Giants were a big thing. That was actually really cool. It does kind of suck that Giants can't seem to decide to stick to a certain pair of colors, because we had, like, white-red Giants in Lorwin, but we had blue-red Giants in this plane, and on other worlds, Giants tend to get placed in, like, green-red. So, Giants right now are in this, like, ink treader colors. Like, what? Gods on this plane were actually MDFCs. They had 2 spells attached to them, and I guess they also like didn't have any protection of any kind. So I guess the gods here are kind of cringe. There's also boasts, which nobody seemed to care about at all. Whenever you attack, you can pay a boast cost to get an effect. Okay. Snow was a big mechanic as well. We got the new snow frames in this set as well, with the cool, like, powdered snow frames. The powdered snow effect on the cards. That was pretty cool. Chat is 50-50 on Kaldheim being goated or mid. I mean, I'm always down for more snow support, honestly. I'm always down for more snow support. Snow is cool. I like snow. There's, like, a growing confrontation between the elves and the gods of the plane. So if we go back, that could be, like, a god-elf war. And at that point, from a world-building standpoint, it would make more sense to have the elves win. Because if you bring back the old gods, you have more to work with on the 3rd return. I'll say good plan, actually, yeah. Because if we go back, you just know there's gonna be like an elf god war. The elves will win, and then the old gods will get brought back, and then we get new cards for, and that like that sets up the third return to call time. The old Kamigawa, not new. New is there too, but we're gonna cover the old Kamigawa first, because I think old Kamigawa gets a bad rap for no reason. I'm like 99% sure chat's gonna vote get out on this one, but you know, I'd be asking Bounce Man, why are you ranking old Kamigawa? It's been changed. I'm doing this because I believe I saw somewhere that they actually are able to go back to the original Kamigawa. I'm not sure. I don't recall what the complications of that were, but I remember seeing somewhere that they were actually allowed to do that if they wanted to. Kamigawa is actually a Japanese world that is slowly having its two realms merge, which is the spirit realm and the mortal realm. An interplanar event caused the veil between the spirit and human world to shift, and this allowed Lord Kanda to take that which was taken from the spirit realm, which we now know as Kyodai. So I'm not sure if Kanda knew, but that which was taken actually, I guess, was the egg that held Kyodai in it, or something like that. But this action that Kanda did had begun the Kami War, where spirits poured forth from breaches in the mortal realm to attack the people. Of course, this was impossible for humans to win, because it turns out you can't kill ghosts. Wow, who would have guessed? If they actually did manage to slay any of the Kami would just kind of like disperse back to the spirit realm. So everything was just against them. And eventually, this act that Kanda did actually summoned Okagachi, which was the greatest of all Kami. Eventually, though, Michiko Kanda freed Kyodai from that which was taken, and with their powers combined, slayed Okagachi, thus ending the Kami War. Now, how the hell are you gonna sit here and tell me that's not cool? They slayed, dude, look at this fucking giant snake dragon. He has his, like, mantle of snakes as like a mane. That's cool as hell. What actually happened was Kamigawa was this powered down set that players had gotten after Mirrodin. Keep in mind, Mirrodin was the set that had a bunch of busted artifact synergies. Cranial plating was like the main one. So Mirrodin was this like overpowered artifact set. And then they got Kamigawa, which was this like legend focused set that was generally more powered down compared to Mirrodin. So what actually happened was people hated the plane not because the world was bad or lame or didn't make sense. It was just that the cards were like unplayable in standard, which at the time was the only format that existed. It was also extended, but that was a weird thing. So this was a set that had a big emphasis on spirits. The mechanics of the set, some were duds, some were actually okay. Channel was introduced in this set where you could discard spells and pay a mana cost for an effect, which acted as, honestly, this is like the closest thing Magic has to hand traps. For those who don't know, in Yu-Gi-Oh, there was a term called a hand trap where cards in your hand have this effect you can do simply by just discarding them. Kamigawa had this series of spells called arcane spells, which was a subtype of instants and sorceries. Now, the benefit to being an arcane spell was that there was a series of cards that you could splice onto arcane spells. So what you did is whenever you cast an arcane spell, you could reveal a card with splice onto arcane from your hand and pay its splice cost. And if you did, you added that card's effect to your arcane spell. So by building around arcane, you could essentially stack your spells without having to actually spend multiple cards from your hand. So you could kind of like do this weird like build your own spells, which I think in theory was actually pretty cool. It was just that all the arcane spells were, once again, very powered down compared to Mirrodin. The set also had a big emphasis on legends. Reki here, whenever you cast a legend spell, you draw a card. Simple and clean. There was offerings, which was like emerged before emerge existed. For example here, Patron of the Orochi, Snake Offering. You could cast a spell anytime you could cast an instant by sacking a snake and paying a difference in mana cost between this and the sacrifice snake. There's a Myojin with their divinity counters. So the Myojin were this like really weird cycle of like big spirits. Actually, no, they weren't even big spirits. They were these cycles of big mana cost for like decent to okay bodied indestructible spirits, but you could remove the divinity counter to get these insane effects. And if you ran that which was taken, you could you could give the Myojin more divinity counters. But there was no reason to do that, because most of the time, removing divinity counter once was enough to win you the game. So, alright. I guess. All in all, I actually think old Kamigawa is way overhated, if I'm being real. However, chat is rating it as mid to get out. So, I guess I'm gonna leave it a mid. What can you do? Neon Kamigawa, which is the overhaul Wizards did of Kamigawa to make it more interesting. 1,200 years after original Kamigawa block, Kamigawa has undergone an industrial revolution, leading to the use of electricity and futuristic technology. When the spirit and mortal realms converge, the merge gates will open, leaving many to wonder what will happen when the merge between the spirit and the mortal realm is finalized. During the Phyrexian invasion, Boseiju was completely destroyed and corrupted by Tamiyo, who of course ended up dying. And during the invasion, Kyodai abandoned her post of guarding the barrier between realms, allowing some Oni to invade the mortal world. I know I just sat here defending original Kamigawa block for a pretty long time, saying it's overhated, but to be honest, it kind of doesn't matter, because new Kamigawa is still just better. New Kamigawa is still just better. The design, like the aesthetic is way more interesting. It's not just Japan. It's neo, like neon aesthetic gamer PC Japanese playing. It's Japanese cyberpunk. It's still cooler. Do I even need to go through the mechanics? Does anyone care at all? We know what it is. Modified equipment, ores, and counter modifications. You got bonus if having one of the three. Sagas came back because of course they did. It just made sense for the plane. The Wanderer got her face reveal in this set. That was pretty cool. Causus. Causus is a plane that got invaded during Mark the Machine. It is described as a cavernous plane covered in crystals with refractive properties. We know it is currently inhabited by humans and Viashino, and the crystals also have some sort of sentience, at least, or at least they have the ability to attain one, as we see with Refraction Elemental. So this is our only piece of art we have of Causus, besides the invasion. So this is Causus. The crystals have refractive properties. So if we went here, we probably see maybe like a counter war mechanic or like theme, like an emphasis on having every color be able to interact with the stack somehow, which could be interesting. Like maybe there's a way to make crystal tokens that you can pay 3 and stack to redirect targets for things. Maybe, I don't know, something like that. I'm leaving it in mid. I actually think a visit to his plane could actually be really cool. The idea of a refractive plane or even like the land itself is intent on reflecting spells back at you actually could give you a lot to work with. Kylim, the plane of Battle Bond. If you've ever played Kingdom Hearts, you'll know that a staple of the series is the Colosseum of Olympus, where there's no running around, there's no like levels design or rooms or anything. It's literally just Sora fighting a bunch of random enemies back to back to back. We actually know nothing about the plane beyond the Arena of Valor's Reach itself. So the issue with a return to this world is that there's not really much to do, or at least not much that we know of beyond the Arena of Valor's Reach. But I feel like that could easily be remedied by just expanding upon the plane. And also, like, you could just change the dynamics, I think, of the arena as well. As you all know, Battle Bond was a set with a emphasis on two-headed giant. So if you've ever actually played Pokemon, right, all the games have this emphasis on 1v1 battles between between you and your opponent's Pokemon, right? However, the official competitive format of Pokemon is doubles. So it's not 1v1, it's 2v2. Doubles actually gives you way more control over the game. In single, which is 1v1, what happens is if one Pokemon just sets up for long enough, they just win. Because they outspeed and one-shot your whole team of Pokemon. Doubles gives both players more control over the game and flow the match. That's why doubles in Pokemon is generally considered to be like the way better format, because it's not so easy for just one side to get completely steamrolled by just boosting your stats for long enough. And it turns out that that same logic applies to two-headed giant drafts. Wow. It turns out that if one player just pulls a bunch of bomb mythic rares, the weight those mythic rares pulls is way lower because there's not two players, there's four. So the chances of one side getting pub stomped because, oh, my opponent just opened better cards than me is like significantly reduced. I honestly wouldn't be against a future where every draft in every like pre-release is just doubles from now on, because it turns out that doubles is just better, like always, like every time. Kylum, I'm gonna say, is a good plane. Easily the coolest thing about this plane is the partner with mechanic, and I don't mean that for Commander. Partner with meant that when you cast a spell with partner with, you always opened the other card that partner with, well, partnered with. So what would happen is if I cast Will Kenrith in a draft, I could have my friend go and tutor up Rowan Kenrith from their deck and put it into their hand. You had a way to actually give your teammate free cards by casting cards with partner with. I think Kylum is a good plane, and Battle Bond 2 should exist. Morrow, please let Kevin Verhey make Battle Bond 2. I'm begging you. Please. We all want it. Lorwin and Shadowmoor. Lorwin is a plane that undergoes a transformation once every 300 years, affecting all living things within it, called the Great Aurora. However, the phenomenon that caused the plane to shift between this mirror, like, twisted version just isn't a thing anymore, and the states between the two planes have actually fused together, with the Lorwin half of this relationship seeming to become the more dominant of the two in terms of characteristics. This was once again a faction-focused plane with 5 creature types taking the stage between fairies, goblins, giants, elementals, and tree folk. I think there was also Kithkin as well, but no one cares about them. We had Champion, where when you played a card with Champion, you would basically exile another creature under that card until the card you played left the battlefield. So you kind of got like this pseudo board protection, as well as also generally Champion cards tending to be more powerful in terms of stats. We actually are returning to Lorwin soon, but that does not come until 2026 because it got pushed back for Marvel Spider-Man.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
We also had Changeling introduced in this set, where cards could just become every creature type by simply having the word changing, or changeling. You also had Evoke, where you could cast spells for a generally reduced mana cost, but as a result, they would get sacrificed immediately when they enter the battlefield. We also had Prowl introduced in this set. Prowl was basically a tribal payoff, or kindred payoff rather, for basically just playing a creature type. So for example, Earwig Squad here, You could play the card for its prowl cost, which was less, if you had dealt damage to a player with a goblin or rogue this turn. So prowl was just like, hey, if you're, playing this creature type, you can cast spells for a reduced cost sometimes. And also generally get a bonus of some kind. We also had Tribal introduced in this set, which later got changed to Kindred. I think the original Kindred cards didn't actually care about any specific creature type. What did matter was the fact that these spells actually had creature types as a subtype. So cards like Giant Harbinger could actually go and fetch up Feud Killer's Verdict if you wanted to. Honestly, I think Lorwin's a cool set. I think the factions are all like pretty solid. I don't think anyone's against any of them. I'm gonna say good playing. You want a block though? Would we be against a block for Lorwin, chat? Would we hate that? Give me a block. Lorwin's a cool set. There's a lot to work with. It is a Kindred focused set. So inherently draft. You know them Kindred sets always have a amazing draft experience. You know they do. Except for Ixalan, because they actually didn't balance the creature types effectively. But that's not a fault on the story writers. That's a fault on game design. Mercadia. Mercadia, plane-wise, is actually defined as just like a shopping mall plane. Like, this plane's entire defining feature is the fact that there's just a lot of trade that happens. And that's it. That's all there is. Mercadia is literally just a shopping mall plane. I think there was one set that had it back in the day. The weather light crashed on the plane of Mercadia, and then there was an entire set dedicated to Rtha and friends just going around trying to buy parts. Mercadian goblins are much larger and smarter than most goblins throughout the multiverse. They actually seem to be running the city despite their servile attitudes. Okay, that's actually pretty interesting. Okay, so goblins here are actually like in control. You know what? I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. Good playing. Good playing. Muraganda. Muraganda is generally considered to be a prehistoric plane, and most cards that feature Muraganda tend to put an emphasis on creatures having no abilities, so vanilla creatures. Unfortunately, we are in the year of 2025 Magic, where creatures having no abilities is bad and unplayable. As a matter of fact, no vanilla creatures get printed anymore. The vanilla creatures as a concept are gone. They have stopped getting made. We are actually visiting this plane as one of the 3 planes for Ather Drift, so we actually are going back there. But as a plane, it's generally described to be this very prehistoric plane with not really much civilization. And interestingly, the mimeoplasm is from here. So maybe, just maybe, we'll see the mimeoplasm enter standard. That'd be sick as fuck. I hope we do. We probably won't, but I hope we do. New Phyrexia. It's gone. Get out! Alright, cool. Moving on. Pyrulia as a plane is actually an inverted sphere. So imagine if we actually lived on the inside of Earth and all the bad stuff was on the outside, not inside the Earth. Like, imagine if you turned Earth inside out and put all of the vegetation and animal life and people on the inside of the planet. That's Pyrulia. It is a plane characterized by its dense forests and gigantic plant life. And it's basically just one giant wildlife sanctuary. And based on previous depictions, it seems the plane might actually lack signs of black and red mana. Like, it's literally just a giant forest, y'all. It's just a giant forest. I'd rather not. Alright, chat. You ready for this one? You ready for this one, chat? Ravnica! Yay! I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because we've been to Ravnica so many times at this point, and there's like a million mechanics to cover. If I did, I'd be here for an hour just covering what happens in Ravnica. To put it simply, there's 10 different guilds, and each guild is aligned with 2 different colors. At this point, I think there's actually like nothing else worth doing on the plane, unless they actually bring back the Nephilim. The Nephilim were these cycle of 4-color creatures that all kind of had these very strange vibes. Like, most of these you can't even tell what they're supposed to be, and they're all pretty much characterized by their lack of 5 colors, and instead being only 4 colors. I think if they actually bring back the Nephilim and have them play a significant role in the story, Ravnica actually can be a fun set to return to. But I think we saw with Murders at Karlov Manor that at this point, people actually are done with Ravnica. People just are not interested anymore, and matter of fact, I'd say people actively don't even want to go to Ravnica anymore because the guilds have been overdone at this point. I mean, look, if you got a 5th return to Ravnica, would you be happy or upset? I feel like you'd be upset. I think if we go back and they actually bring back the Nephilim as a driving force in the story of the set, that might be cool. But besides that possibility, then no. Rtha. Rtha is the plane that Chandra actually first planeswalked to when she sparked. It was here that she honed her pyromancy at Carol Keep for years. Plane also apparently has a phenomenon known as Purifying Fire, which is magical white fire that actually burns cold and is able to probe the soul for sin and able to drain mages and even planeswalkers of all their power, including the ability to planeswalk. The plane, I think, has never ever been depicted outside of red cards, so it's actually totally possible that this plane only has red mana, which makes going to it for a set like nearly impossible. Like, I'm not sure there's a single non-red card that depicts Rtha, dude. Hang on. No. How about Carol Keep? No. Overall, Rtha, I think, is a plane that just going to is impossible. Like, it is a plane characterized by fire, which is just red. So, no. Tarir was in a very primal, unrefined state, but apparently Ugin actually molded the plane into what he wanted it to be. Tarir currently is a world ruled by dragons, with 5 different factions between them, being the Dramoka, Atarka, Kulagon, Silumgar, and Ojutai brood, each one being defined by 2 color pairings of red-green, blue-black, white-blue, black-red, and green-white. Originally, though, the plane was ruled by the Khans of Tarir, which was the 3 color factions that Alara didn't use. So Sarkhan had found Ugin's corpse after he was killed by Nicobolus. And after traveling back through time to revive Ugin, by doing that, he essentially caused the Khans of Tarir, the 3 color factions, to be completely erased, which is what caused the plane to now be ruled by the Dragon Brood. We actually are going back to Tarir fairly soon. Dragon players will be happy, I guess. I'm not gonna lie, I actually think the Khans were more interesting, and also dragons as a creature type have gotten so pushed in the last few years that at this point I'm actually starting to get somewhat bored of them, which is probably insane to say because dragons are such a staple in fantasy. But I don't know. I actually think that the Khans were way more interesting, at least in terms of like values they upheld. The 5 dragon factions have what? The effect of the dragons? The plane of Chandel, which is a very generic fantasy plane similar to Dominaria. It's often used as a generic setting for cards in like core sets, or I guess foundations now is the core set 2.0. The Onaki were ogres who were the creators of the Chain Veil, which is Liliana's whole thing at this point, is just the Chain Veil's existence. They exist on this plane as spiritual remnants. When the Phyrexian invasion happened, somehow the Chain Veil's magic was able to seep across multiple planes to the Onaki catacombs, and somehow they managed to just like come back. I don't know if this is like temporary or if they actually like came back as like permanent residents in the story. Or what? I don't know. There is the Chandelar game, which is super old, and I don't understand why Wizards hasn't tried to like make a new modern day version of Chandelar, but they haven't. Wizards, please do that. It'd be so cool. I'd love that. Going to have to say Chandelar is probably a I'd rather not tier plane, because it's honestly very similar to just Dominaria in terms of theme. There's not as much lore to the plane as Dominaria, so I guess if for some reason you think lore matters, then there's that. Fun fact, Talrand actually canonically is from Chandelar, so there's that. Next up is the ER. And by the ER, I mean Theos. Theos is a plane that got absolutely fucked up by the invasion. It is a plane inspired by Greek mythology, with a pantheon of gods who thrive within the space of Nyx, which takes an appearance very similar to space and like cosmos themselves. The gods' powers on this plane are actually dependent on the faith of the people. So, if all of Theros' people somehow manage to forget about a god's existence, that god will also cease to exist. During the invasion, many worshippers were completed, which actually turned many of the gods into Phyrexians themselves. Because again, the gods' powers are dependent on the people who worship them. It is implied that all of the monocolored gods, along with Keranos at least, were completed, with Athreos being speculated to have survived, and Ephara being confirmed to have survived through her card in Martian Machine. The set's general big thing is enchantments and devotion. Devotion is basically Chroma from Lorwin plus. Or I guess it's actually it's not even plus, it's just Chroma renamed. So your devotion is equal to a number of mana symbols in permanents you control. So you have cards that basically scale with how big your board state is. Devotion generally is a pretty low mechanic. It's probably like top 10, honestly. There's a big theme of enchantments on a plane. Like I think a Constellation is the one where it's like whenever you cast an enchantment or an enchantment enters, you get to do the thing, that sort of stuff. Oh, we had Escape in Return to Theros, where you can cast spells from your graveyard for their escape cost and by exiling cards as well from your graveyard. I think Escape generally was a pretty well-liked mechanic. It was just that Uro was the main issue there. Honestly, I think Theros actually has a lot to work with now, considering the fact that most of the gods just like died because what happened was the gods got completed due to Phyrexian worship, but then all the Phyrexians just died because of the oil becoming inert. So I imagine all the gods that got completed, they probably ceased to exist, I believe is what happened, because all the Phyrexians who worshipped them just died. So Theros is in a state of like total religious turmoil right now because half the gods are like gone forever. Good plane. I would not be against a third visit. Thunder Junction, our cowboy set. Thunder Junction is an uninhabited plane prior to the Omen Pass, which ended up adopting a Wild West style. Many villainous parties came to the plane post-Omen Pass to chase a life of crime due to the absence of law on the plane. The Omen Pass opening actually awoke a sort of primal magic the plane just inherently had, which appears as blue lightning and has been dubbed Thunder, hence the name Thunder Junction. And Thunder has been put to use in various tools and weapons, such as trains and pistols, stuff like that. The plane also has evidence of previous inhabitants through the Fomori Vault, which contains the worst thing to ever happen in the history of Magic, loot. Also, the plane is Cactus Folk. I think the theming is nice, but unfortunately, Thunder Junction was what started the whole meme of funny hats. Like, they just put all these people from previous worlds on a single plane and then gave them cowboy hats. What? Like, the set felt very, like, Smash Bros. Because it was just a bunch of legends from previous planes all kind of mishmashed together into a single world. So it was cool in that regard. As for mechanics, there was a big emphasis on legends once again, because of course, if you put a bunch of legends from previous worlds onto a same singular plane, there's going to be an emphasis on legends. We had Saddle, which was basically just crew, but for creatures. So you could tap creatures to get a bonus when your saddle creature attacked. Deserts, once again, got a big emphasis on this plane as well, same as Amonkhet. We see it in cards like Colossal Rattleworm, which was rampant growth from your graveyard for deserts. And finally, we had Plot. So you could pay a mana cost and exile a card face up from your hand, and by doing that, you can actually cast it on a later turn for completely free. So Plot was kind of a new take on Foretell. Personally, I think Foretell is a more interesting design space because Plot just kind of says, oh, it's free, which kind of just plays into the whole, like, you know, Cascade, Discovered, yada yada mechanic. We also had Committing Crimes, which was a controlled player's wet dream, because whenever you target anything your opponents control or their graveyards, you get bonus effects. So all those blue-white controlled players just it's everywhere. Blue-white players just had a time of their life on Junction. There's still like a lot of potential forgotten lore the plane seems to offer through the existence of these ancient Fomori looking like structures through like the Fomori vault and whatnot. So there is a potential history here that we're not being shown, but I think there actually is a lot to do world building wise. Plus, when we go back to Thunder Junction, in theory, it should have actually adapted and changed a lot, because when we actually got to Thunder Junction for the first time, people were just settling down on this world. So I want to say good plane because it has a lot of potential, I think, in terms of design. Tovada. Tovada is actually the home world of Kaya, the infamous black-white spirit ghost assassin person. For years, the sky of Tovada has been covered with its own weird version of Aurora Borealis, with a twisted and jagged-like appearance, and it has been dubbed the Broken Sky.
Oh, scary! Oh, shiver my timbers!
The plane apparently has a certain important figure referred to as the Goddess, which Kaya seemed to answer to some degree before she became a planeswalker. The Broken Sky apparently seems to have some sort of extreme effect to the inhabitants of the plane. Kaya once claimed that the Broken Sky literally drove her people insane, and it apparently got worse as time went on. So the effects kept compounding on themselves as time went on. Furthermore, when Phyrexia invaded the world of Tovada, spirits actually poured through the Broken Sky to defend the plane from Phyrexia, implying that this phenomenon has some sort of significance with death. Tovada is one of those planes that we don't really know much about beyond the invasion card. It has a Rabia scale rating of 10, but Morrow last said that during 2020, which I believe was likely before any of the Phyrexian invasion stuff was planned out to feature Tovada. I believe the potential for a Tovada set is there, but it would have to have some serious post-apocalyptic themes, which honestly I'm all for. I'd be totally for that. However, there's not much to work with in terms of world building, so I'm gonna say mid. Rtha. Rtha is actually a plane ruled by the Sengears, which actually is like really relevant because Sengear is actually like a really relevant bloodline in MTG lore. Black mana is apparently extremely dominant on this plane. And the world is described to be without rivers or oceans, which also implies a complete and total lack of blue mana. Rtha is depicted as a dead zone, with the land having something honestly not too different from the Shadow Curse in Baldur's Gate 3, if you all saw that, where the land is just corrupted by shadow and nothing can live there. It apparently also has a planar portal beneath Castle Sengir, but nobody actually knows where it goes. So once again, we have a plane here, which seems to be pretty post-apocalyptic in themes. Could be cool to work with. It's a plane ruled by vampires, so vampire players would love to go here. However, the lack of rivers and oceans in lore kind of makes me think that going here is pretty much impossible, because if you canonically have no bodies of water to work with for islands in your MTG set, that means you can't make island cards. So yeah, that's an issue. I'm gonna say mid. It is a post-apocalyptic world with nothing to do in it besides look at vampires. And also maybe explore the planar portal beneath the castle. But if we were to use the planar portal, we would no longer be on the plane of Rtha. So what the hell is the point? Vryn. As I'm sure you all know by now, Vryn is actually Jace's homeworld. Is a plane defined by its gigantic rings of unknown origin used to channel the ley lines of the plane's mana into a network. Prior to the invasion, there was actually a big conflict between the government and resistance forces, which left the plane in a constant state of tension, with war threatening to break out at literally any moment. But this actually was an advantage for Vryn when Phyrexia invaded, because both sides were already prepared to fight a war. So Phyrexia came and actually did not have the element of surprise, because both the resistance and the government already had an army and military forces at the ready should battle break out. So Phyrexia just got completely destroyed when they invaded Vryn. We actually apparently were supposed to go to Vryn in the past. A Vryn set was already planned not once, but twice. But they were both changed ultimately to Capenna and Neo Kamigawa. So we actually should have been here twice by now, but we've still only been here 0 times. Vryn was also depicted in Origins as Jace's home plane, so there's actually already a fully functioning world here. I'm a little afraid that it might be a little too similar to Fiora, because there's constant tension. I'm gonna say good plane. Xerix. Xerix is a plane featuring large, seemingly impossible passages, with much of its geometry seeming impossible to exist. Kaleidoscopic and reality warping effects being a very common sight on the plane. When Phyrexia invaded the plane, their attack plan basically immediately just failed, because they literally could not comprehend the plane or even fight in the plane for that matter. Morrow has said that making a set for this plane is actually really hard, because the idea of having to build a plane around impossible geometry is really hard. But in my opinion, we actually already did this with Duskmourn. Duskmourn is a plane that is constantly shifting in terms of geometry. I would argue that Duskmourn kind of already is Xerix in a way, but it's just more horror-oriented. I honestly think going to Xerix totally could happen, if I'm being completely honest here. The idea of impossible geometry, I don't really think is that big of a deal, considering Duskmourn being so weird already in terms of geometry and settings and locations. If you can make a set for Duskmourn, I feel like you can totally make a set for Xerix. I'm gonna say good plane, because from what we've seen, the art of Xerix is actually really cool. I think Stairs to Infinity is actually a really good piece of art. This is gorgeous, dude. I like this. This is very pretty. Zendikar, a plane that I'm sure no one has ever heard of in their entire lives. So when we first went to Zendikar, it was a plane that kind of was meant to capture that D&D vibe. There was a big emphasis on exploration and dungeon crawling, so much so that we even got a mechanic based around crawling through dungeons through traps. So traps were these spells that became borderline free if your opponent met certain conditions, which I think was actually really cool. The idea of your opponent triggering a trap by doing something too much, I think was actually a flavor win, considering the fact that it was a plane inspired off of dungeon crawling. And interestingly, they actually didn't bring back traps for Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I'm not sure why, because that seemed like the perfect place to bring them back, but whatever, I guess. The plane also seemed to be very rich in mana, and there was this secret lore going around about this forgotten species called the Eldrazi. The Eldrazi were depicted as these, like, very strange alien creatures that we weren't really given a whole lot of context of, but eventually they actually were released in Rise of the Eldrazi, and it was revealed that the Eldrazi were actually these, like, world-destroying monsters that, if they wanted to, could totally just destroy the entire multiverse. These things had the ability to drain mana from the land itself and basically reduce everything to wastes. Eldrazi are a fan favorite now. Everyone knows them. They're one of, like, the most loved things about Magic, and honestly, the Eldrazi actually are one of the very few completely original concepts that you can only find within Magic. So that alone, I think, actually does give Zendikar as a plane a lot of credit. We actually did return to Zendikar with Zendikar Rising, but it turns out that if you take the Eldrazi away from Zendikar, no one cares about it. So that's an issue. I think Zendikar still has potential to make the Eldrazi involved through what Ugin has said about how the Eldrazi are like a small piece of what we actually know about them as a species. I still think there's a lot to work with, but we'll just have to see what happens. I'm going to say good plane. Zhalfir. Zhalfir was actually a plane that was very dear to Teferi, and he actually had phased the plane of Zhalfir out thousands of years ago to protect it from Yawgmoth during the Urza era of Magic. In the decades and centuries that Zhalfir has been phased out of existence, only 10 years have passed. So Zhalfir actually came back through the multiverse during the March of the Machine invasion, and all the people of Zhalfir were already prepared to go to war, not with current era Phyrexia, but Yawgmoth era Phyrexia. Zhalfir is a monarch-ruled kingdom with coastal elements. It has actually now swapped places with Phyrexia in the multiverse, and has actually adopted the 5 sons of Mirrodin. So now Zhalfir is kind of like this half Mirrodin plane as well. I know the 5 sons of Mirrodin were actually one of the very loved things about the plane, so I know people will probably be happy to hear that the sons are still there. Apparently Teferi actually was a part of Zhalfir's court as a important role in the societal system the plane had. And before departing Zhalfir's court as position of council, he created 5 creeds for each color of Magic, which the people of Zhalfir now abide by. And also, the Mirren Resistance has been accepted as refugee citizens on the planet of Zhalfir. That's the plane swap. So now Zhalfir and Mirrodin, Old Mirrodin, have kind of like fused into one plane, which I actually think gives you a lot of stuff to work with in terms of making a set. I don't think we've actually ever even had a set on even just Zhalfir by itself. I wouldn't be against a Zhalfir set. I'm going to say good plane. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you want to support me, you can become a member of the channel and get access to exclusive emotes such as Loot Cheems. And you will also get access to our Discord server where you all can hang out and have your exclusive little space just for y'all. I love y'all, and I will see you all next time.